Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
I assume Tom.
We are thrilled to be chatting with you about the return of LA Comic-Con in October. You have an incredible lineup this year. LA Comic-Con started in the basement of the LA Convention Center in the parking lot, and here you are taking over 2/3 of the convention center now.
Well, RC, thank you for having me. It's great to see you. It's been an incredible journey. 2011, we were down in what the building calls Kentia Hall, what you and I call a parking lot, and it was an amazing show because it was sort of started on a bootstrap from a group of friends who were frustrated because they couldn't get tickets to another show for a couple of years in a row, and they said, let's have our own. And they were fortunate to get Stan Lee to come to that first show, and he loved what he saw, and he became a kind of a partner of the show and licensed his name to the show, and it all just sort of evolved from there. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, and this year is going to be absolutely amazing. Your guest list is like, you guys went all out San Diego style. I mean, you got Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Rosario Dawson, the cast of Back to the Future, a reunion of the Addams family from the 90s with Angelica Houston and Christina Ricci. First of all, to get Angelica to come to the convention just blew my mind.
We were super fortunate. We had Christopher coming as part of the Back to the Future cast, and we had been talking to Christina for a couple of years to find a time that she could come. And we all started talking Addams Family, and we reached out to Angelica's agent, and we have great relations with the agents in town. And I think we were fortunate that we hit a time where she felt like it was a good opportunity to come out and see fans. It's her hometown con, we couldn't be more thrilled to have her, and the fan reaction to the reunion was really terrific.
I found out about LA Comic-Con year 2, so it was after getting out of the basement. The founder, she contacted me, and she's like, hey, you want to come? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And it was year 2, and from year 2 on, we've been coming to LA Comic-Con. So I'm thrilled to be back, and that you guys actually want me back.
Absolutely. No, and that was the first year I got involved as well, because at the time I was working in the trade show business, and I was running a show called Licensing Expo, which is in Vegas and London. And one of the original investors called me and said, a comic convention is sort of the consumer extension of what you guys do at Licensing Expo, and you should get involved. And I became involved right before the 2012 show, where we acquired half the show and became the partner to the founders in terms of doing some of the, all the back office stuff, all the less glamorous parts of running a trade show, and really let them spend their time and effort where it was best applied, which was with talent and programming and in the community.
How did the name switch come about? Because it went LA Comic-Con to Stan Lee's Comic-Con to Kamikaze back to LA Comic-Con.
So it started as Kamikaze Expo. That was 2011.
The correction, yeah.
And I said Stan came to that show, and we did a license deal at the time with his company so that it became Stan Lee's Kamikaze Expo. And it was that until I think 2015. And at that point, they changed the name to Stan Lee's Los Angeles Comic-Con. And it was that for a couple of years. But Stan, I think in 2017, sold his company to a Chinese company. And they had a clause where they were able to terminate their license agreements. So they decided to terminate all of them and start fresh. And so we dropped the Stan Lee part and kept LA Comic-Con. So since 2018, we've been consistently Los Angeles Comic-Con or LA Comic-Con. So I think we'll stick with that when everybody knows what it is.
Right. Kamikaze was a great name, by the way. That was a fun name.
It was fun, yeah. The only issue with it was you have to explain what a kamikaze is to people. You don't have to explain what a Comic-Con is. And so it makes the marketing challenge a little bit easier.
Right. And there was that negative connotation behind it, so
there was that as well. So, yeah. But it was a clever play on, the common naming convention in the industry, and it certainly helped get it on the map.
As the evolution has hit from the basement to the penthouse, shall we say, in this instance, and you've seen the way it's trekked over My God, 13, 14 years now.
Yep.
You know, what's it like to sit there 14 years later, 13 for you, being a part of the show and go, wow, we went from this to here we are now as one of the biggest Southern California conventions?
You know, in many ways, it's the same. The guiding principles of the con are exactly the same as they have been from day one, which is really, you know, the company is owned and run by a small group of fans, and we solicit the fans in LA to find out what they're into and what they're interested in and who they want to see and meet. And our whole goal for the year is to do the best we can to get as many of the folks and things they want to see into the show, and then, you know, for 3 days, bring it to life. So that's been exactly the same. I mean, we are completely a fan-driven group. The filter that we make for every decision is this going to be fun for the fans? Will it delight them? Will it be unexpected? I mean, we have LA such an eclectic mashup market for every kind of entertainment in the world, and we want this show to reflect that. So that's always been the same. I think what's changed is, you know, from 2012, certainly when we moved upstairs through COVID, the show got bigger, more fans discovered us. We were able to afford slightly different talent as we went along, but always never losing track of the fact that, you know, some of the quirky talent is the most popular stuff at this show. I mean, we have very educated, dedicated fan bases here in LA, and, you know, a reunion of an 80s Nickelodeon show is likely to draw almost as much of a crowd as the Four Hobbits drew last year. And that's just the way the LA market is. And so we try to have that mix to it. And, you know, COVID was obviously difficult for all of us, particularly if you were in the event business, because we had no events for 2 years. But then coming out of that, I kind of took a lesson from my days in the trade show business, which was when you come out of an economic disruption, you should look to grow and expand, not just try to get back where you were. And so that's when we moved into, and we added West Hall, we added anime, we added gaming. And I think that's, you know, what you're going to see at the show in 3 weeks is really the broadest range of entertainment we've ever had. And again, I think the fans have really responded to that. Last year we had almost 100,000 people of the 120 some odd thousand we had go to the gaming hall, and it got almost the same, you know, kind of 4.5 stars out of 5 rating that the traditional hall had. So I think what you're seeing is an evolution that is driven by the fan desire and the fan demand.
Excluding this year, because we don't want to disrespect any of the guests that are coming this year and going, oh, I'm not who you wanted the most. Excluding 2014 or 2024, I'm sorry, excluding 2024, who was like your ultimate guest that you fanboyed out for and were so giddy to have to the show?
All right, for me personally, well, first and foremost, Stan Lee. I mean, I grew up as a comic collector. I was a huge Avengers fan. And I told, you know, when I met Stan, I told him this whole story about I had the entire Avengers series when I went to college, every single book that had ever been published, and had to sell it my sophomore year to pay tuition. And it was one of the most painful things ever. So for me, as a, you know, 50-something adult, getting to work with Stan for 3 or 4 years, I'll treasure those memories forever. I mean, that was sort of the most amazing thing of it. But other than that, my kind of core, my personal core fandoms revolve around Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. And so last year, having, you know, we'd had Elijah and Sean Astin at the show in the past, but we'd never had all 4 with Dom and Billy, all 4 of the actors that played the Hobbits. So that was a personal highlight for me. I actually went in, stood in line, and got a picture taken with them. Just a fan. And you know, Ewan and Hayden this year have been in the top 5 of requested guests from our fans for years. So we're thrilled that we were able to not get just one of them this year, but both of them.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic, and congratulations on that. You know, it's interesting to see how, when I started FanboyNation was 2012, and when, you know, we both got hooked up with LA Comic-Con, it was 2012. So to see like kind of everything moving along in parallel lines, at least, you know, it's exciting to be back as press to cover the event. What's something from the press side that I should look most excited to cover this year in October?
You know, I think if you haven't, obviously what we do in South Hall is like, it's your traditional con. And as you know, one of the things that we do a little differently is we take our main stage and we put it in the middle of the hall, because as a fan, you know, I had worked other conventions. I used to work for Disney, and I worked in the movie business. and I'd worked other conventions, and I never liked the idea that the best content was somewhere else, that the fans had to leave the show. They had to go wait in line for 2 or 3 hours and hope to get in, because you want, when the fans are spending time and money and love with you when they come to the show, and you want them to be able to enjoy every minute of it. And so that go wait in line for a few hours thing, I never thought was a great idea. So that was the one thing I did in 2012 was we moved the stage right in the middle of the show floor. So one of the things I think it's fun to watch is the ebb and flow of crowds around that stage. There's pretty much 2,000, 2,500 people for almost anything that's there. But if you were there last year when the 4 Hobbit actors did this stage, we actually took some pictures from above and measured it out. We had 10,000 people participating in that panel. They backed up and filled half the hall. And that's why the Jumbotron and the sound system are as big as they are, is so that it can project out to as big as it wants to be. So I think watching that ebb and flow on the main stage there is fun. The other thing I'd really say, if you haven't spent much time over in the West Hall, the gaming and anime hall is really grown. We're having the finals of a Fortnite tournament there this year on Saturday that's sponsored by Gonna Need Milk. It's the largest tournament ever. Focused on female gamers. They're trying to sort of shine a spotlight on female gamers, who are 46% of the gaming community, but only about 1% of the earners in the industry. And we have free play areas, and we have Team Liquid's coming in and doing a really fun thing with their influencers. So I think what you're really going to see is a vibe in West Hall that is really more of a. Oh, excuse me, I have to take care of my dog. Hey, here. Maybe sit with me for a minute, and then we won't have to worry about him barking. You're going to see a vibe there that's very gaming driven, and it's got a lot of fun anime. And it's a terrific complement to sort of the traditional con experience going on over in South, and a slightly more sort of tech gaming anime vibe going on in the other hall. But I think they complement each other nicely.
When you mentioned bringing the main stage to the main floor, that was always something that was most appreciative of, because like you said, going away to see something else that was cool, sometimes you don't want to come back. You're like, I already walked 1.5 miles to get here. Now I got to go back. And, there's a heat wave. Like, we just finished our heat wave in Southern California. Things have finally cooled down, but we don't know what's going to hit in October. All those things coming about, you're just like, do I really want to go back? Are there going to be any after parties this year?
We're not planning any after parties this year. It's post-COVID, we've really been focused on bringing as much to the show floor as we possibly can. But that's sort of one of the things I would love to do going forward, is get back to a more organized, at least on Saturday night, some sort of an official event, which we've done in the past. But it's for us, we're so focused on the guest lineup and the floor and the logistics that we tend to sort of pull our head up like a month out from the event and go, oh, we don't have a party yet, we should do a party. So maybe if there's somebody in your audience that's really good at planning parties for events like this, they can call me 6 months in advance and we can figure something out.
All right, we'll figure that out for 2025.
Done.
And if you need a PA announcer, you know where to find one.
Exactly.
While Women of Wrestling has been a part, of LA Comic-Con for the last handful of years as well, how exciting was that to bring in professional wrestling to a show like LA Comic-Con? Because for the longest time, people forgot that there is a major crossover between professional wrestling and comic books.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I believe that really what we are is we're a pop culture con. And so and LA is such a unique city in that so many different industries, it's the creative headquarters of so many, whether it's music and TV and streaming and movies and we have sports leagues based here and all this other stuff. So we really strongly believe that to be a pop culture convention, we have to have all of that stuff represented. And it doesn't surprise me. You look at TV ratings, when we bring in wrestlers, when we bring in, the Women of Wrestling, they draw gigantic fan base. And, I'm a big fan of all the shows. I mean, I think everybody in their own way does a great job. And I was at the Fanatics Fest in New York a couple of months ago. And I think the biggest draw at the whole show was Hulk Hogan. I mean, and they had Tom Brady and they had all this great, amazing people, but you should never underestimate the loyalty and the intensity of the wrestling fan audience.
Having visited several other conventions across the country, What is one pitfall that LA Comic-Con learned from observation that you were able to avoid that some of them weren't able to do so?
You know, I never speak ill of my competitors because I think everybody does a great job and does the best job they can. I think the thing I learned is that you have to build a con for your city. That you can't, there's no such thing as like a generic con and then you replicate it in 10 cities around the country. I think you have to lean into the taste and the desires and the culture of the city that you're in. And so we try really hard to have every decision on guests be driven by fans. We do surveys every single year. Who did you like best this year? Who didn't come? Who do you want to see? And that, from the day after the show, that becomes, our wish list of who we're trying to get as guests for the following year. So I think the other thing is logistics have to be perfect. When you come to a show, it's unfair to make a guest wait in line for an hour and a half to get in. That's not their fault. That's the organizer's fault. Because if you think through what your bottlenecks are and you think through how it's going to work, you can create a system where nobody's ever waiting more than half an hour to get in. So, but again, I think that's just another aspect of being fan centric, of making sure that when they make the decision to come spend the day with us, we want every minute of that day to be theirs, to be, quality, to have them be seeing things they love, discovering new things, just enjoying the experience. And so we try to make the wayfinding intuitive. We try to just make sure that what's going on reflects the really diverse tastes and the eclectic tastes of the Los Angeles market.
Well, you mentioned LA sports. We can go to a Dodgers game in the afternoon and then ultimate frisbee, shortly thereafter in the evening.
Yeah, and we've had sports figures before. We have a relationship with LAFC, and they brought players in. The year they won the MLS Cup, they brought the cup into the show. I think it was almost like the following week, and we didn't announce it, but within 10 minutes, there were 2,000 people lined up to take pictures with them. We have a terrific relationship with LA 28. And they brought some Olympians in last year. They're going to bring some this year. And I think as we go forward and get closer to 28, each year we want to do a spotlight on a couple of sports. Our venue, the LACC, is going to be the host for certain sports during the 28 Olympics. And so I just think we need to immerse ourselves in all the things that Angelinos care about in their lives as part of their pop culture, and then make a fabric of that can be represented in microcosm at the show.
And that's the beautiful thing about LA is that, yes, LA has a weird reputation of being LA, but it's also exciting to see the fact that this place really does bring out the best aspects of entertainment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then we're really fortunate because there's a lot of, we're able to have a lot of celebrities come to the show because they live here, because, the proposition of, we'll send a car to pick you up after you've had breakfast with your family. You come spend the day with us and you're home for dinner. It's a much more inviting way to do it than you have to get on a plane and stay in a hotel and go through all that rigmarole, which they do because many of them just love to interact with their fans. But I think we're just really fortunate in that having so many people live here, it makes it easier for us to get interesting guests.
And the beautiful thing is there's so many restaurants in the area that we'd be able to attend post-show that just makes it that much better.
Yeah, I think what they've done with LA Live and that whole surrounding area. We have the hotels now and the restaurants, and you're seeing more and more people making a weekend of our show, coming in, getting a hotel room. About a quarter of the tickets we sell now are weekend tickets, and so and that's really fun. It's fun to think of that community of thousands of dedicated fan nerds coming and spending the whole weekend with us and really enjoying downtown LA, because that part of downtown LA has evolved so much in the last 10, 15 years. And then come to the show, and then sometimes they'll go, there's a hockey game going on, or there's a basketball game going on, or there's a concert going on, and you talk about nighttime parties. We'd love to get to a point where we expand over there, and after the show we have maybe something in the Peacock Theater and people can come there, and then there's a band that goes and plays over there. It's a wonderful entertainment district, and the developers in the city have done a great job of really evolving it and making it a terrific destination.
What would also be fantastic is like a movie premiere connected to LA Comic-Con, where either you go to Kodak, or if you guys want to be able to stand up for another 90 minutes, we'll project it on the Jumbotron. Here's the world premiere of X film that you guys get the exclusive to.
We did a really fun thing a couple of years ago with when Zombieland 2 came out. The cast came and did a panel, and at the end of the panel, about 900 people followed them over to the Regal Theaters at LA Live, and they'd taken over 3 or 4 theaters, and the cast went and talked to each group of people, and then they played the movie. And again, that kind of thing, sort of taking advantage of the proximity of the studios, the proximity of the theater assets. I think as the show continues to grow, we would love the whole downtown area to just be a celebration of entertainment over the course of the weekend.
And you guys have been able to do that for the last 13, 14 years. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you, RC. You're one of the few people I know who's been coming pretty much since the beginning, since we crawled up out of the basement. We always say we have this image, you know, Stanley, the octopus, our mascot. I always have this image in my head that he's out in the water off the coast of LA all year, and once a year he kind of comes to land and comes to the show and then goes back. And so he comes up out of the ocean, we came up out of the basement.
That would be a great animated clip, just the combination of the two.
Well, we'll have to talk to some of the artists at the show this year and see if we can work on something.
Well, you have also an incredible lineup of comic book artists that are coming. I mean, Comic-Con, the comic artists are the foundation. Artist Alley is something everyone should be excited for. You know, these guys work their tails off. Without them, there would be no comic industry.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think we never want to forget that. And so getting Scott Snyder to the show, Mark Silvestri coming back, Ryan Otley, we have not just the known artists, but we have about 550 artists in our artist alley. I think we're probably one of the largest artist alleys in the country. That's important to us because we want to have the established stuff there, but we also want, there's something about a con where, you know, when you turn a corner, there's an aspect of exploration and discovery to it. And if you can find a new artist or a new property or something you haven't seen before, it's that sort of that finding, that delight in finding something new is, for me, is part of the fun of going to a con. So yeah, so we always have a completely separate focus on that part of the show, make sure that we have great artists coming, and make sure that we, you know, have an artist alley that can accommodate almost as many artists as want to come.
Right. I love the fact that you have Tim Sheridan and Jeremy Addams, who have worked on such incredible DC animated properties, that are still excited to sit in the artist alley aspect and not have like a separate booth. They're still with their foundational crowd.
Yeah, no, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the artists, and I think we hear from the fans over and over again. I mean, when we ask people why they come to the show, you know, nerding out, seeing cool people, and shopping are pretty much 1, 2, 3, and they're pretty equal. And I think that it's that shopping experience that the artists are just absolutely essential for. Excuse me, I'm gonna put my puppy dog on the floor and hopefully he'll behave. You be good. Sorry.
Listen, it adds an aspect of realism to the interview. It's not just a straight Q&A.
So other than that, you know, the other thing, because of Michael J. Fox coming this year, we, you know, we've had some charity tie-ins in the past. We thought it would be appropriate to reach out to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. And so we have a partnership with them, and we've been raising money for them throughout the show, and people have been donating when they buy tickets, and we're going to make a donation. We're going to do some other stuff on site. So I think that's important too, that we, you know, we're giving back to the community at the same time that we're sort of creating this destination once a year for the community to come together and nerd out.
You know, and speaking of Michael J. Fox and his Parkinson's Foundation, people with disabilities, like I myself have had a handful of concussions, so I know what TBI you know is like. People with various physical ailments. How has the convention center and the con been able to acclimate and be more inclusive in that regard for people with physical disabilities?
We've tried really hard to work to understand what all the not just the rules and regulations, but what makes it easier for people in the ADA community to come and navigate the show. And, you know, one of the things that we do is, where our normal badge pickup is over in West Hall, which has a lot of stairs and things, all the ADA picking up badges and entrances are in the South Hall, which you can come in right off the street. We actually bring in help to make sure that if people need help getting where they're going, that they can do that. So between signing and signage and ADA and assistance, we try to bend over backwards to make sure that if people have a special need to be able to get in and see what they want to see and go where they want to go, that we're able to accommodate that.
And there are sign language interpreters for the hearing impaired, for the panels
Correct.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. No, you guys have done a lot to elevate that. And because there have been some cons that it wasn't necessarily neglected. I think it was treated as an afterthought just because it was such a small community, but not realizing how big that population is within various fandoms.
Yeah, well, and I just think if we're all about access and inclusion, which we are, then we have to think about, you can't say, oh, that's only 2% of the population, we don't need to worry about them, because we want them to have as much fun as everybody else. So I think we learned that lesson early on, where you don't, if you're new to, I came out of sort of the B2B trade show side of things. When you're new to the consumer side, you don't necessarily think about that, which means you don't budget it. And then all of a sudden somebody brings it up and you're like, oh, and you just have to ignore that. You just have to say, whatever we need to do to roll out the red carpet for everybody, that's what we need to do.
All right, Chris, I'm going to ask you this question. I think this is the first time I've ever asked a convention founder this question, but I typically ask fighters this question. All right. After the weekend, dust is cleared. We've locked the doors. 2024 is in the books. What is the definitive go-to meal after a successful con?
Actually, the definitive go-to meal is I take the entire team out for dinner. So we find someplace close to the convention center. We count up all the last things we need to count up, and then 25 or 30 of us gather somewhere nearby and have a dinner to just relax. And whether it's Mexican or it's Italian or it's whatever, that's less important than, I think, getting everybody together and thanking them. Because when you do an event like this, and we're a small team, there's only 9 or 10 of us during the course of the year. I mean, we obviously bulk up a little bit when it comes into the show. But that last 2 months is a 7-day-a-week sprint. And so it's important, I think, that everybody take a deep breath and say, we did it. People had a great time. We're gonna take a week or so off before we go crazy starting to plan next year. But I think it's more about everybody coming together for the meal than what the type of food is.
I dig.
And there may be, a margarita or an old fashioned thrown in there somewhere for some of us.
A couple of pitchers.
Exactly. But you know what? Everybody, by the time the show's over, everybody's earned the right to take a deep breath and have a little bit of a break.
Unfortunately, people have missed the deadline to have their badges mailed to them, but they can still
No.
Oh,
We extended it. We extended it, and it is now midnight tomorrow. So people can buy badges up till midnight tomorrow, and we're gonna do a special batch mailing on those last badges so that they can get them in advance.
All right, get those badge requests in so you don't have to wait in line for half an hour to pick them up. The website is Comic-Con LA, October 4th through the 6th, October 2024. Comic-Con LA is the Instagram handle. Chris, if we want to reach out to you personally and go, Chris, thank you so much for an incredible weekend, do we contact you through Comic-Con LA, or do we contact you through
Chris@ComicConLA.com? That's me. And RC, I just want to say thank you, not just for coming and inviting me on, but I think people like you who give the fans a place to learn what's going on and have a community, particularly in COVID, you were absolutely essential to being the glue to hold this community together when we couldn't get together in person. And so thank you for what you do for the community. We really appreciate it.
I'm extremely humble, and I'm always thankful that you're willing to have me out and chat with me about the event. Can't wait. October 4th through the 6th. It's going to be a great time. Downtown LA, it's essentially a nerd takeover, and we're all going to fanboy out together.
Exactly. So be sure to give me a holler when you're at the show. I want to say hello in person.
Oh, absolutely. And then maybe one of these days I'll actually join you for margaritas. A couple of days after the show when the dust is
after the show. All right. Well, thanks for having me.